Welcome to the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris, focusing on life, leadership, family, marriage, and the church. We are providing tools for our inspiration and wisdom for life. Our goal is to inspire everyday people to live wise lives. If you're new to us, we release a brand new podcast weekly on Thursdays. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. Here's our host, Christopher J. Harris.
Hello, my friends. Welcome again to another episode of the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. I am your host, and I'm so excited to have you tuned in with us this week. I am rolling out the welcome mat for you, particularly for all of our first-time listeners. So glad to have you tuned in. This is a weekly podcast where we focus in on life, leadership, family and marriage, and ministry. I firmly believe, I have a passion around the idea of wisdom. I believe that when wisdom becomes a part of your life, your entire life gets better. Every single part of your life, it gets better. And so we hone in on how to make sense of what we're hearing and what we're seeing. And we have some incredible conversations and incredible guests on. And we try to cover the topics that people are thinking about. We try to answer the questions that people are asking. And today, we're just going to have a brief conversation about this notion of freedom. Here in the United States, we just recently celebrated the 4th of July, which represents the nation's birth, America's birth. And if you're on social media, if you are having some scholarly discussions and dialogue, then around this time of 4th of July, this could be a tense time. For many people, for many groups of people in our country, that while the country celebrates its independence, many argue the point that we are not as independent as we need to be. Last weekend, or the few weekends ago when we celebrated the 4th of July, many people have really just kind of acquiesced to there being a combination of friends gathering, outside grilling, fireworks, fruit, vacation time. And we definitely want to remember and give gratitude for the reason behind all of these festivities. But I think we should also take it upon ourselves to consider what real freedom means. And particularly those of us that are people of faith, we should consider what it means within the context of our faith. Our faith and freedom don't have to be mutually exclusive. In fact, they can actually come from the same source. And so we want to spend a few minutes just talking about what that is. I think when we reflect on this notion of freedom, there's almost probably no greater word, no single word that resonates most with Americans in particular and people across the world who want freedom, who like to talk about freedom. Even in a way, we've commercialized it in a sense, because when you watch marketing campaigns or television commercials, they will announce that when you buy a certain product, that it will make you free. People celebrate our country's independence with songs of freedom. We have this notion of patriotism, and that if you're not a patriot, then you're not really celebrating the freedom that we enjoy. And yes, it is true that there are many people that have literally laid their lives down, lost their lives for the freedoms that many of us enjoy. Politicians, business leaders, marketers, advertisers, salespeople, military leaders, the whole nine, all know how to use freedom to attract attention and draw interest. And so I think we have to consider, though, that there are very few words also that are so common that carry so much weight. Freedom is one of the most sought after ideas in human history. Man's search for freedom has taken us into some of the most intense protests and struggles and revolutions and wars and even world wars today can all be attributed to this notion and this idea of pursuing freedom. Even in the midst of being a free society, many people continue to fight for freedom, and in some cases, what they perceive to be even greater freedoms. Did you know that what most people call freedom today in some ways could actually be slavery? The great majority of people today are deceived, I think, in many ways by what real freedom, true freedom is. And we want to try to just for a few minutes unpack that. We can't really be free until we know what it is, until we know what freedom is. Neither can we avoid slavery unless we know what slavery is. And let's unpack that in some ways. There's this verse, this Bible verse, for those that don't read the Bible, that may be listening to this, indulge me for a moment. But this verse in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 19, the Revised Standard Version says that they promised them freedom. And he says this about many people who promote the idea of freedom. He says they promised them freedom, but they themselves are slaves of corruption. For whatever overcomes a man, to that he is enslaved. If you are overcome by something, Peter says, you are enslaved by it. So what does that mean exactly? Let's take an easy one. Let's take alcoholism, for example. People may consider it a freedom to be able to drink as much as you want, whenever you want. But many people do that so often, they become alcoholics. They then crave the alcohol and feel miserable without it. It then impacts their budget and finances. It impacts their mood. It impacts their relationships. It impacts their clarity of thought. It then becomes consuming with their attention spans. And alcohol abuse comes then with a staggering price tag. I already mentioned economically and relationally and mentally and emotionally, also socially. It costs billions of dollars each year to cover the health and social services that are provided to alcoholics and their families in the United States, include their decreased productivity at work. And the cost is even far greater. Those that are under control of alcohol have higher rates of marriage separation and divorce, crime, automobile accidents, property damage, injuries even to people, depression, and even suicide. They and their families, their friends, all end up being losers. So it's easy to see that as they struggle with their addiction, they are ruining every single facet and component of their life. So then the question then becomes back to the root. Hey, I have the freedom to drink as much as I want to drink whenever I want to drink it. Are alcoholics then really free? At one time, they may have thought alcohol gave them freedom, but in truth now it has enslaved them. So then we've got to take a look then, without pointing the finger at the alcoholics, and look at our own lives and evaluate our own lives and see what may be enslaving us. In some cases, for some people, it could be technology. It could be their phones. In some people, it could be a relationship or a person. And I know some people who are literally addicted to working out. And for them, it has now become slavery. So let's define freedom. And this is my own definition. In my own thinking, my own way of processing this. And I want you to understand the full capacity of what I'm saying. Freedom then is progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. Freedom is progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. Freedom is not no limitations. Freedom is not complete independence from anyone or anything. Freedom is not just the ability of choice, even though choice impacts freedom. I'll talk about that in just a moment. When you look up the definition of the word freedom, you'll find that it says the power to act or speak or think without externally imposed restraints. And I get that definition, but I think it limits the full breadth of what this notion of freedom or the pursuit of freedom is, because it talks about externally imposed restraints. I believe that there are also times where there are internally imposed restraints as we pursue freedom. And so then, in fact, what are we working towards? I think that we have to get to this place where we understand that we all are in a pursuit of our life purpose. Or each thing, each person has purpose. And the freedom that we have in life is then the ability to pursue that purpose. So then the question becomes, Are we living up to our capacity? And if not, what are the things that are limiting us from living up to our full capacity? And then oftentimes what those things are that are limiting us to living up to our full capacity are the things that inhibit our freedom. Freedom isn't just about having money. Money is a tool. It's not the end. Getting the money is a tool to accomplish your passion, to accomplish your purpose. Going out and getting whatever job you want, yeah, you have that freedom, but you can get a job and then be enslaved by that job. That job should help you pursue your purpose. Yeah, you can go out and get in a relationship with anybody that you want, but if that relationship doesn't help push you towards your purpose, then now that relationship causes you to be in bondage, to be enslaved. No, freedom is then progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. I think the underlying premise of this limited definition, the power to act or speak or think without externally imposed restraints that we find online or find in dictionaries, the underlying premise is that the enemy of freedom is hindrances that are imposed upon us from something or someone outside of ourselves. And we all want to think this kind of freedom. When we think about it, we think that's what we want. We think that we want the absence of any kinds of restraints, but that's so negatively minded. When you think about some examples, slavery is a cruel denial of freedom because of the system that it imposes and the people who it perpetrates and the coercion of people that it impacts. But when you really think about it, what that slavery is really doing is it's limiting the full potential of the people who are oppressed. So, in fact, they are prevented from acting or speaking or thinking for themselves or living out a maximized life. Now, just so you don't think that I'm falling off of my rocker, freedom is a God idea. It's not just a social construct. It's not just a cultural idea. God created it. When you think about creation and how it started it, there's this sense of freedom, access to God, living up to potential, the ability of choice, and the options for living to our full capacity that God gives to Adam and Eve, literally at the beginning of creation. It's even evident and clear in the job description that Jesus shares in the New Testament of why he was even sent here. In Luke chapter number 4, verse 17 through 21, he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor." Watch this. "He has sent me to proclaim liberty," freedom, "to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty," freedom, "to those who are oppressed." Literally his job description, Jesus's, God's son in the flesh, was to bring freedom, give us the ability to live out and fulfill progressively our calling and our purpose. The Bible can help us, though, distinguish between what it means for us to be free from something and to be free to do or be something. In this case, I am giving you that broad definition that I gave you earlier. That is, watch this, progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. That is connected to this idea that we should both be, free from something and free to do and be something. Freedom from and freedom to, I believe, are two sides of the same freedom coin. The great church father Augustine taught that true freedom is not choice or lack of restraint, but being what you are meant to be. Let me say that again. That was so good. The great church father Augustine taught that true freedom is not just choice, not just lack of constraint, but being what you were meant to be. Hence my definition that I gave you, that freedom is progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. So freedom is a God idea. Now, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Let me just kind of back up and say that choices impact freedom. Choices impact freedom. So if freedom is a God idea, we see the evidences of it that even at the beginning of creation, then what happened? Adam and Eve made the choice to reject Watch this, the freedom that God allowed. The nation of Israel, many ways rejected the freedom. We can go all the way through the Old Testament, all the way through the New Testament, and discover, even bringing it to modern day in our own lives, that there are times that we make choices that actually put us more in bondage. Now, please hear this. God created human beings, not robots. God created human beings, not robots. He gives each one of us the free will to make a choice. We don't want to get involved with things that have the illusion of freedom and, in fact, could create more of a burden. As I mentioned earlier, for example, technology or a job or a relationship. Now, why is that important? It's important because we have to think about literally the 7 different dimensions of our life and how all of this plays into the 2 sides of that same coin as we make choices. Free from something and free to do or be something. 2 sides of the same freedom coin. So the choices that I have to make in these 7 areas will help me navigate the true freedom that God desires. You're going to want to write these down. Here are the 7 dimensions of our freedom. Number 1 is spiritually. All of us are going to serve something. All of us are going to serve a God of some form or fashion. We've got to make the decision who that is going to be. In my case, I've made the decision that I will not allow anything else to take the place of the true and living God who created the heavens and the earth, who is the Father of Jesus Christ, who is a part of the Trinity, and who already made provision for my life and my purpose even before I was born. Your spiritual life. How are you pursuing freedom there? Number 2, your physical life. So what's interesting is that all of us have a purpose. Our bodies are assigned to us at birth and have the responsibility of helping us to literally carry out our purpose here in life. It is the tangible expression of our purpose. It is where our senses are connected to the earth around us. It is our flesh suit. So how are you pursuing freedom there? Are you eating what you should be eating and exercising and maintaining that body of yours so that it can have a quality of life that helps you sustain and live out the purpose that God has for you? Physically, how are you pursuing freedom? Number 3, mentally and emotionally. Your mind is your control center. It is mentally and emotionally where we discover, watch this, that we are a spirit that has a soul that lives in a body. We are a spirit that has a soul that lives in a body. So our soul then is the seat of our mind, our will, and our emotions. And when we think about that, we have to be able to have healthy thinking and live our lives in a way that we take care of our minds, we take care of our wills, and we take care of our emotions. Our emotions are simply indicator lights of things that are going on under the hood of our life. God doesn't tell us to totally dismiss our emotions. He invites us to use wisdom in how we engage them. How are you pursuing freedom mentally and emotionally? Are you in the right environments? Are you listening to the right conversations? Are you allowing the right things to entertain you? Are you connected to the right kinds of people? Are you allowing worship for your soul? Worship for your soul involves studying and reading and learning and listening and growing. How are you embracing that? Number 1, spiritually. Number 2, physically. Number 3, mentally and emotionally. Number 4, financially. Oh, this is a tough one for us because we discover that how we spend our money is a close reflection of what's in our heart, what's important to us, what we value, and even perceived values. So we've got to look at how are we pursuing financial freedom in a way that allows for us not just to engage in the short term, but the long term. Are we leaving a legacy for those that are a part of our family and a legacy financially for those that will help to make decisions for us even in the future? Are we helping to sustain ourselves? Are we just being drugged down by debt and the pressure of expending and expensing things that we just shouldn't be doing? How are you pursuing financial freedom? Number 5, professionally. How are you pursuing professional freedom? That is, that you position yourself with your real life credentials and experience and profile and knowledge and ability, your professional intelligence, your IQ, your emotional intelligence, your EQ. And how do you become a resident expert in your field? How do you become a lifelong learner so that you have a certain level of acumen about how and where you do your job? Do you feel like you're just stuck where you are, or are you pursuing all that you are supposed to be pursuing? Do you go the extra mile? What's your mindset when you're approaching your work? Do you regret getting up on Monday mornings and thinking, okay, I can't wait until Friday? Or are you finding the joy and the satisfaction that comes, first of all, from even having a job, but second of all, just understanding that God may have you there for a reason? How are you pursuing that freedom professionally? Number one is spiritually. Number two is physically. Number three is mentally and emotionally. Number four is financially. Number five is professionally. Number six is relationally. How healthy are your relationships? How healthy are you allowing yourself to live and embrace good, quality, valuable relationships? Relationships that fuel you. Relationships that allow you to be who you're called to be and that give you perspective, that hold you accountable, that challenges you. Sort of like this iron sharpens iron idea where you are better because of the relationships where you're around you. Or are you a toxic person? The Bible lets us know that he that has friends or that wants friends must show himself friendly. Are you friendly? Or do you basically make decisions that cause you to live life on an island? God did not wire us to live our lives on an island. So how are you helping to maintain positive quality relationships? None of us are wired to maintain an abundance of toxic relationships. So where there's reconciliation and apologies and forgiveness that need to be extended, let's do that so that then you can maintain healthy relationships. Number one is spiritually. Number two is physically. Number three is mentally and emotionally. Number four is financially. Number five is professionally. Number six is relationally. And number seven, finally, is culturally and communally. How are you pursuing freedom in regards to your culture? Are you looking at the issues that are going on in our day and you're totally just kind of distancing yourself? The relationship and proximity that you have of those issues seem far-fetched and away from you? Or are you finding your passion and your burden and finding a way to be a solution to the problems of the world around us? That's what true freedom is. It is fulfilling and living out your capacity to fulfill your purpose. Finally, today, I want to challenge you with this notion that once you achieve a certain level of freedom, once you start pursuing that purpose and living out that capacity, you then have to have the challenge of maintaining the freedom that once you were reaching for. And so there's this thought that freedom comes with responsibility. Freedom comes with responsibility. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 13, it says, "For you were called to freedom, brothers. Only," watch this, "do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another." Here is what he's suggesting in one word, that once you pursue freedom, you receive it, you want to maintain it. How do I maintain it, Christopher Harris? I maintain my freedom by intentional living. Am I intentionally making decisions spiritually? Am I intentionally making decisions physically for my body, my physical health? Am I intentionally pursuing freedom for my mental and emotional health? Am I pursuing freedom? Am I making choices every day intentionally to pursue financial freedom and professional freedom and relational freedom and then culturally and communal freedom? It's intentionality that becomes the game changer to maintain this freedom. Again, I want to leave you with this definition, this working idea of what true freedom is. It is progressively living out the capacity to fulfill the full purpose of a thing. Happy independence to you. I hope that you enjoy your freedom. Most of all, I hope that you're living an intentional life for your freedom. I end every single episode the same way. Live wisely.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the Wise Idea Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. We hope you enjoyed our time together. If you did and would like additional resources and information, you can find the previous episodes, show notes, featured guest information, and more at www.thewисeideapodcast.com. We also invite you to join the conversation on social media. The Wise Idea Podcast is on Twitter and Facebook. Find us at The Wise Idea and at our Facebook group, The Wise Idea Podcast. On Instagram, find us at The Wise Idea Podcast. Our host is also on social media. You can find him regularly on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, all located at CJ Harris 1. Finally, if you enjoyed what you've heard, Head over to iTunes and or Google Play and leave a rating and review for other listeners to find us. Our podcast is also on Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you the next time. Live wisely.